Energy Minister Stuart Young has been chosen by the PNM Parliamentary Caucus to take over as Prime Minister following Dr. Rowley's departure from office. We have Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath, a political scientist, joining us via Zoom to discuss the recent announcement regarding the Prime Minister's succession. Good evening, Dr. Ragoonath.
Good evening. Good evening to your viewers and listeners.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us this evening. According to Professor Hamid Ghani, we have just heard that early succession planning is uncommon in Trinidad and Tobago, and the final decision regarding appointment rests solely with the president, who determines the individual likely to receive majority support. Can you break down for us what the next steps of the Prime Minister would be at this time?
Okay, so the Prime Minister has indicated to the national population that all 21 members of the PNM membership in the lower house will support Mr. Stuart Young to become the next Prime Minister. The Prime Minister could then decide, will decide at his own timing when he will submit his letter of resignation to the President. Hopefully, by the time he submits that letter of resignation to the President, he may also submit with his letter of resignation a letter containing the signatures, a fixed date of all 21 members saying that they would support Mr. Young to be the next Prime Minister. And to that extent, that is the end of the Prime Minister's role in this matter. For all intents and purposes, we don't know yet today when he's going to submit that letter of resignation. He has tentatively suggested sometime after Carnival or around Carnival time. But we will wait and see whenever he submits that letter of resignation, whether or not he will also submit a letter from the PNM Parliamentary Caucus as to who they support to be the next Prime Minister.
Dr. Ragoonath, I think many people are asking at the same time, are there any other avenues constitutionally for the selection of a Prime Minister?
Not necessarily. Constitutionally, the Constitution is quite clear. It is the President to decide whichever member of the Parliament, the lower house that is, the House of Representatives, commands the majority. The President will decide that either on his or her own, or in this particular case, we know for a fact that if the members of Parliament would have signed to that effect that this is the person they will support, then the President should act in accordance with the wishes of the majority. If, however, there is no clear leader, then it is up to the President to choose who the President thinks will lead. We noted that, I think Dr. Ghani made reference to that in 2001, when we had the 1818 tie. The then president, notwithstanding that Basdeo Pandey had 18 members supporting him, Patrick Manning had 18 members supporting him, the president decided that he was going to give the support to Patrick Manning as to he commanding the majority. Of course, what we realized thereafter was that Patrick Manning did not command a majority, in that, yes, he was named Prime Minister, but he could not command the majority in the Parliament. Hence, the Parliament could not elect a Speaker. Hence, the Parliament had to be dissolved and new fresh elections called. So, no, there is no provision within the Constitution apart from the President selecting the Prime Minister based on the President's notion of whosoever commands the majority in the lower house.
Well, Dr. Ragoonath, globally we are seeing this trend where presidents and prime ministers are removing themselves from their governments respectively. And this is obviously a very notable time for not just Trinidad and Tobago's political landscape, but also in a global perspective. Seeing that this is the first time that a prime minister has announced his successor in Trinidad and Tobago before a general election, how then does this move, in your opinion, impact our political landscape?
Well, clearly there are several concerns here that arises. In other countries, as you mentioned before, what the prime minister would have done was simply to resign as political leader, allow the party to elect a political leader and then going to a general election. We saw that happening in Britain, in England, for instance, when Mr. Johnson removed himself as Prime Minister and various other Prime Ministers. They decided they were going to resign, but before resigning as Prime Minister, they allowed their political party to select a replacement political leader, and so when they resigned, it was an easy transition. The Canadian Prime Minister has literally said the same thing, that's the practice he will follow. In Trinidad and Tobago, however, Keith Rowley did not say that. He said that as far as he's concerned, he's removing himself as Prime Minister. As to how long he will stay on as political leader, we don't know. He has suggested that the next convention of the PNM, where a political leader can be elected, will be in September. But again, that would be dependent upon the institutions within the PNM, the General Council, for instance, agreeing to that, because he's leaving, but he's actually calling the shots as to when the party can function in certain activities. And I think that is a challenge for the party as the party goes forward. So in answer to your question, how does that relate to the fact that we are going into a general election? Well, as I had said before, the resignation of the Prime Minister as a Prime Minister and political leader put some pressure on the party as at this point in time to try to get away from the distractions of leadership issues and other sorts of issues and inviting within the party and the party focusing on preparation for the general election. We really have to wait and see how the PNM deals with this.
All right, wait and see. Thank you so very much, Dr. Bishnu Ragoonath, of course, political scientist, helping us understand what this means for the future for the political party as well for Trinidad and Tobago, as he differentiated for us right here on TTT, the difference between that leadership role of not just having that distinct responsibility and selection criteria for a political leader versus the role of a prime minister. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Ragoonath, for joining us this evening.